It is almost dawn in Whitechapel, 1888. Gas lamps fade. A cart rolls over wet stones. A narrow lane, someone stops and listens. The city holds its breath. Footsteps echo, then vanish. By sunrise, a rumour will spread across the East End, and a name will form that people still say today. Jack the Ripper. London in the late 1800s is crowded, noisy, and uneven. In the East End, many people live hard lives. Streets twist and narrow. Rows of lodging houses sit close together. Markets spill onto pavements. The smell of coal smoke hangs in the air. Work comes and goes. Money comes and goes too. At night, some people sleep in beds, some in shared rooms, some in shelters, and some outside. Gas lamps give small circles of light, but much of the city remains in shadow. This is the world of Whitechapel in 1888. It is also the stage for a short, terrible series of attacks. The crimes happen in or near public spaces, lanes, yards, a room with a thin door and thin walls. They happen fast, at hours when streets are quiet but not empty. Police patrols exist, but they are not everywhere. No cameras, no radios, no fingerprint database, no DNA. If you want to find someone, you use your feet and your notebook, and you hope witnesses remember what they saw. The first recognized case many people point to is Mary Ann Nichols, found at Bucks Row on August 31st, 1888. It is dark, almost morning. Workers on their way to jobs pass by. There is shock, confusion, then the alarm spreads. Within days, papers begin to link this attack with others. The area is tense. Women warn each other not to walk alone. Police increase patrols, but the streets are a maze. 8 days later, on September 8th, Annie Chapman is found in a backyard at Hanbury Street. The hour is early. The neighbourhood is already stirring. People hear fragments, voices, a movement through a gate, a sound that might be steps or just the city shifting awake. Investigators tried to pin down a timeline. Who saw whom and when? In crowded streets, time and distance blur, yet the sense of pattern grows. A woman alone, a sudden attack, a quick escape into the warren of alleys. At the end of September, the fear climbs another step, with what many call the double event. 2 attacks happen the same night, September 30th. Elizabeth Stride is found off Berner Street. Not long after, in Mitre Square, Catherine Eddowes is discovered. The square sits inside the City of London's jurisdiction, not the Metropolitan Police's, and that split matters. 2 forces now share a case that does not care where a map line lies. Messages rush between stations. Officers fan out. The name Jack the Ripper appears in papers with growing force, pushed by letters and headlines that seem to speak for the killer, whether or not they truly do. Weeks later, on November 9th, Mary Jane Kelly is found in a small room in Miller's Court. This scene is indoors, unlike the others. It shakes the area, and it shakes the police too. The press frenzy, already loud, grows louder. People pack around the court. Some pray, some point, some shout. Many just stand in silence because there is nothing useful to say. Across these scenes, certain threads appear and certain differences remain. That makes this case hard to hold in one hand. The times are mostly in the dark early hours. The locations cluster in the East End. The attacks are sudden. The escape routes are short. But the exact method changes. The streets change. The level of risk the attacker takes changes. Did one person do all of this? Most historians and detectives think so. But even now you will find strong debate. When a city is scared, rumors multiply, copycats exist, and newspapers, especially in that era, have their own pressures to sell stories that feel larger than life. The letters are part of the legend. Dear Boss and Saucy Jacky and From Hell are titles you still see in books, but which, if any, are truly from the offender is an open question. Some experts say none are. Some say one or two might be real. What is certain is that the letters shaped how people saw the case. Words on paper gave the attacker a voice, whether it was his or someone else's. They gave reporters text to print, editors a hook to hang headlines on, and readers a mask to fear. A letter signed Jack the Ripper turns a set of crimes into a character, and once a character exists, it is hard to push him back into the file. Let's look at the city itself. Whitechapel is not just fog. It is factories, markets, lodging houses, street sellers, pubs, and police beats. It is also darkness between those beats. A person can step out of view with only a few quick turns. Witnesses describe a man here, a pair there, a couple in a doorway, a coat with a certain cut, a hat of a certain style. But styles repeat, coats repeat, hats repeat. People work late and move at odd hours. What looks suspicious to one person looks ordinary to another. Police notes fill with small differences. Height guessed in inches. Hair color in the glow of a lamp. Mustache or no mustache. A foreign accent, or only the hint of one. Stress changes memory. So does time. And each day brings more rumors that wash over yesterday's details. The police are not idle. The Metropolitan Police and the City of London Police both deploy officers. They interview lodging houses, canvass door to door, ask landlords about guests, track down men who match descriptions. They bring in doctors. They hold inquests. They post rewards and field thousands of tips. They move with the tools of their era, which means slowly, in person, often at night, often under pressure. The pressure is not only to catch someone, but also to calm a city that feels like it might boil over. Some in the press accuse the police of incompetence. Some in the force blame the press for stirring panic. Both have points. The truth sits somewhere in the middle. The investigation faces limits of technology, time, and terrain, and also the force of public fear. Who were the victims? They were people with names, families, friends, good days and bad days, and long walks through a hard city. Many had struggled with poverty and housing. Some had turned to sex work to survive. The East End holds many such stories in 1888. In a respectful telling, the victims are at the centre. That means we speak about their lives before we speak about how they were found. It means we avoid graphic detail and focus on what the case revealed. That the city failed to protect people who lived at its margins, who moved at hours when safety was thin. Suspects appear early and often. Some are men who lived nearby. Some have medical training. Some have strange habits. Some look like a witness sketch. Over time, writers have named dozens of people. A few names repeat often in books and documentaries, but there is no confession that holds, no trial that settles the matter, and no forensic proof you can point to and say, this is final. In a responsible narrative, we describe suspects as hypotheses. We compare what fits and what does not. Alibis, movements, job hours, route knowledge, possible skills with a blade, knowledge of the neighborhood. Then we stop at unproven, because that is where the evidence stops. This is not a dartboard. It is a ledger. You add and subtract. You do not throw. What about the police mistakes? Every large case has them. Witness notes can be lost. A boundary between two forces can slow a message. A patrol might pass the wrong lane at the wrong time. When people speak different languages, a detail can change as it moves from mouth to mouth. Some choices, viewed now, look bad. Some decisions look like the best that could be done with the facts on those nights. It is easy to judge a past without feeling its heat. It is harder and more fair to remember the tools they had and the fear they faced. The media's role is also complex. Papers inform the public, which can keep people safer. Papers also dramatize, which can make rumor look like fact. Editors debated how much to print and when. Some ran sketches of scenes and people that brought the story to a wide audience, but also fed a kind of theatre. A catchy name can focus attention. It can also hide reality. Jack the Ripper is a mask that pulls all eyes to a single imagined figure, even when a city should look more widely at violence against poor women and at the conditions that made them vulnerable. The nickname is a bright light, and bright lights can blind. What would modern tools change? Today, investigators would secure wider perimeters, recover fibers, swab for touch DNA, run national databases, and map movements with cameras. They would use geographic profiling to see which streets the offender likely knew well. They would test letters for saliva or skin cells and track paper and ink. They would use software to cross-reference tips and sightings. All of that could move the case forward. Even so, a careful and fast attacker with short routes, who chooses moments without witnesses and leaves little behind, can still slip through. That is not comforting, but it is true. Technology helps. It does not solve everything by itself. If you walk the timeline with care, you see how small the windows are. People describe seeing a woman speaking with a client. Then minutes later, a body is found. That speed matters. It suggests the attacker moved with confidence and did not linger. It suggests he knew where to go next. He may have blended in well enough to pass any officer who did not know his face. He may have looked like countless other men, coat, hat, steady walk, a man no one would turn to stare at. If that is so, then witness ID becomes even harder. We build stories around striking figures. Real offenders often look like the next person on the street. The question that never leaves is why here and why then? The East End in 1888 is a place full of pressure. Poverty, overcrowding, migration, work that is uneven and often unsafe. In that pressure, some people get overlooked. Danger can hide where society refuses to look closely. The case forced London to look. It forced the police to think about patrol patterns and cooperation between forces. It forced the public to ask why entire neighborhoods felt like a different city after dark. None of these questions ended with the case. They continue in different forms in many cities now. There is also the pull of legend. Jack the Ripper has become a cultural figure, a symbol used in novels, films, tours, and articles. Legend makes a tidy pattern out of a messy world. But legend also brings risk. It can reduce the victims to chapter headings and raise the offender to a myth that overshadows them. A respectful approach turns that around. It restores the balance. It keeps the focus on real people and on the forces that shape their lives. It treats the attacker as a problem to be studied, not a ghost to be worshipped. So what do we actually know in careful lines? We know a cluster of attacks happened in and around Whitechapel in late 1888. We know the victims were women living close to the edge of survival. We know the scenes were fast and the escape routes short. We know the investigation was intense but limited by the time's tools. We know letters influenced the public story regardless of authorship. We know many suspects have been named, but none has been proven beyond doubt. We know the case changed how cities think about policing, media, and fear. We also know what we can learn from it now. We can learn to pay attention to people who live in the margins. Night workers, the unhoused, those who move in hours when most sleep. We can learn that lighting, patrols, and open lines between police units matter. We can learn to read media with care. We can learn that a name like Jack the Ripper is a story tool, not a solved fact. And we can learn to keep dignity at the center of any true crime story. Let's revisit the scenes, briefly and calmly, through the eyes of the city that woke up to them. A constable beats a steady route and finds something he cannot forget. A neighbor hears a voice on the other side of a thin wall. Then quiet. A market stall opens late because the owner is answering questions at a station. A lodging housekeeper reviews the night's guests and tries to remember who came in after 2. A reporter dips a pen, checks a detail twice, and hopes the line between truth and fear stays clean on the page. These are the small, real moments that built the case. And then there are the families. Some had little room to grieve because food and rent do not wait for sorrow. Some found their loved one's name in a paper before an officer reached them. Some held on to a small item, a glove, a ribbon, a photo. The case did not end for them when headlines moved on. It did not end when the city's attention shifted to a new crisis. It lived on in the quiet parts of their lives. Remembering that keeps our tone honest. If the attacker ever read the papers, and if any letter was truly his, he would have seen the city react in the way some offenders crave: attention, fear, and the feeling of a game. The best response to that, then and now, is patient work. It is the refusal to turn a criminal into a legend. It is the steady care of building safer streets and better systems, and of telling stories that honor the people harmed. By winter, the attacks most people link to Jack the Ripper have stopped. There are theories about why. Perhaps the offender died, was jailed for another crime, left the country, or changed methods and victims. We cannot say. What we can say is that the case left a long shadow. It taught lessons that still matter to investigators and to communities. It also taught storytellers a responsibility to separate what is known from what is guessed, and to keep the human heart of the story in view. Imagine now the East End again. Lanes damp with fog, lamps ticking out as dawn arrives, the clatter of a milk cart, the shout of a market seller setting up early. The city continues. People still go to work, still drink tea by small fires, still talk to each other at doors and windows. Fear does not get the last word. It never has. The last word belongs to the people who live, help, watch, and remember. That is the story I wanted to tell. A clear walk through a dark chapter, guided by facts and by care. Not to thrill, but to understand. Not to solve, but to see. CTA. If this calm report helped you see the case more clearly, please like the video, subscribe for weekly fact-first true crime, and comment below. I'm curious, which single element feels most important in this case? The map of the streets, the short time windows, the letters, or the witness accounts? And why?